Welcome to Sound of Resistance channel. The Ukrainian army is on its way to becoming an invincible power with the support of the West. After the defeats in Ukraine, the Russian army again lost the dominance of many regions it occupied to the Ukrainian army. As the Ukrainian army continues its advance across the country, it pushed the Russian army towards the border areas. The Russian army, which is cornered by the strong attacks of Ukraine, finds the solution to escape. The invasion of Ukraine, initiated by the instruction of Russian leader Putin, became a graveyard for many Russian soldiers. It is claimed that the number of Russian soldiers who lost their lives in Ukraine so far exceeded 80,000. Troop losses in Ukraine escalated tension in Russia. The atmosphere of peace in Russia gave way to rebellion, chaos, and uprisings. You can witness the reaction of every segment of Russia to the Russian government. Opponents in the Kremlin have even launched a petition for Russia's resignation in recent days. As a result of the failure in the war in Ukraine, trust in Putin has come to an end. He points out that the developments in the south of Ukraine have lost their belief that the Russian army will also win in Ukraine. While the evacuation process was taking place in Kherson, Russia, an unexpected development took place. Some of the Russian commanders announced that they resigned from their duties in the Russian army. Russian commanders stated that they left because they thought they staying in Ukraine longer would not add anything to Russia as the reason for separation. Moreover, the developments in Kherson are not limited to this. The general at the head of the Russian army ordered his soldier withdraw from Kherson. The Ukrainian army could not hide its surprise after the developments in Kherson. Ukrainians are trying to make sense of what is happening in Kherson. The separation of the Russian commanders, the withdrawal of the Russian troops in Kherson is trying to put the pieces together. The Russian general explained the main reason for the decision to withdraw the Russian troops from Kherson as follows. The Russian general stated that the Ukrainian army has been continuing its attacks against Russia's logistic networks for months, and that in its last attack, the Ukrainian forces destroyed all our logistic networks and made them unusable. Russian general, the attack of the Ukrainian army on the logistic networks has caused the closure of the 8 routes to the Russian army. That's why he announced that he had decided to withdraw the Russian soldiers. There is another unexplained reason behind the decision to withdraw from Kherson. For a long time, Russian soldiers have had problems in Ukraine due to the depletion of weapons stocks. With the closure of the 8 roads to the Russian army, the hope of the Russian army to reach weapons was exhausted. In Ukraine, on the other hand, there is a completely different situation. Ukrainian allies have not spared their support from the Ukrainian army since the very beginning of the war. Ukrainian allies have repeatedly provided weapons to the Ukrainian army. With the support of the weapon from the West and NATO, the Ukrainian army succeeded in gaining superiority in the regions of Ukraine occupied by the Russian army. Support for the Ukrainian army continues. Another good news for Ukraine came from the USA. The Pentagon announced that the United States will send another $400 million in military aid to Ukraine, and that it has established a security assistance center in Germany that will oversee all arms transfers and military training to Ukraine. The United States has committed more than $18.2 million in weapons and other equipment to Ukraine since the war began on February 24th. On Tuesday, U.S. Undersecretary of Defense Colin Kahl claimed that half of Vladimir Putin's tanks have now been destroyed by Ukrainian soldiers. He mentioned that the Russian army was helpless in the war in Ukraine. It came from Turkey in a statement following Russia's withdrawal from Ukraine. Putin has failed. Russia will come out of this war weaker than it entered, Erdogan said. Putin entered this war trying to destroy Ukraine as an independent, sovereign democratic country. He failed and this will not change, Erdogan said. U.S. funding includes extra aid for Ukraine. It covers additional air defense tools that will help Ukraine better defend it against the increasing Russian missile and drone attacks that severely damaged the country's electricity and war infrastructure. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, after meeting the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky last week, "We are aware of the acute need for air defense at this critical moment when Russia and Russian forces are raining missiles and Iranian drones on the civilian infrastructure of this country," he said at the press conference in Kiev. Sullivan is one of the top of US officials to visit Kiev, and his visit was previously unannounced for security reasons. The US aid package to Ukraine includes $400 million in aid, as well as contracts from 1,100 Phoenix Ghost aircraft, financing for the refurbishment for 45 tanks, and an additionally 40 riverboats. The Phoenix Ghost drone is an armored kamikaze drone that explodes on contact with its target. The T-72 Fangs are drawn from the existing defense industry inventory in the Czech Republic, covered by the Netherlands, and will have advanced optics, communication, and armored packages. The Pentagon said they are part of the total 90 packages of T-72 tanks that will send to Ukraine by 2023. Additional air defense systems are included in the paid package that the US will provide to prevent the Russian army's airstrikes with drones in Ukraine. In the air defense system to be supplied to Ukraine, Hawk will be provided by surface-to-air anti-aircraft missiles. After the news of the aid package to be made to the Ukrainian army, Russia rolled up its sleeves to defend the areas it's occupied. The UK's Ministry of Defense said on Tuesday that Russia is strengthening its lines in the occupied areas. Russia has begun to build defense structure around the occupied southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol. For this purpose, the Russian army produced two factories, concentrate pyramidal anti-tank structures known as Dragon Teeth, Mod said in a statement. The Dragon's teeth were probably placed between Mariupol and the village of Nikolsky, and from northern Mariupol to the village Starky Krim. Mariupol forms part of the Russians' land bridge from Russia to Crimea. It is an important logistic communication line. Dragon's teeth were also sent for preparation of defense fortification in occupied Zaporozhye and Kherson. While Russia continues to strengthen its lines in the occupied region, a request came from the founder of the Russian Wagner Group. Yevgeny Prigozhin, owner of the Russian Wagner Group, has demanded the construction of a reinforced Wagner Line defense line in the Russian-occupied Luhansk Oblast. The activities of the Russian Wagner Group show that Russia is making a significant effort to prepare defense in depth behind the existing front line. Great strides are being made to prevent the rapid progress of Ukraine. While the USA announced that it will continue its aid to Ukraine, some part of it reacted. Former Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn infuriated Ukrainian officials after he agreed to speak at an event organized by an ultra-left group that shattered pro-Moscow claims, such as blaming NATO for the invasion of Ukraine. The former Labour MP for Islington North will attend a panel at the event, which is expected to invite Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to tell Western leaders to stop arms distribution and negotiate peace with Putin. This move has reportedly sparked anger in President Zelensky's circles. Dasha Zavirna, a senior advisor to the Ukrainian presidency, said the group's aim was to separate carefully crafted narratives by Russian intelligence services. Jeremy Corbyn once again finds himself getting close with known associates of Vladimir Putin and other useful idiots manipulated by the Kremlin, said Dasha Zavirna, senior advisor to the Ukrainian presidency. It is disgrace to call on the West to stop the supply of weapons that allow us to defend ourselves against an illegal, unprovoked invasion that has killed the Ukrainian people, he said. There is no doubt the weapons aid provided by the USA to Ukraine will strengthen the power of the Ukrainian army. Ukraine's allies are not paying attention to the escalation of opposing views and criticism. It provides Ukraine with extremely important weapons and military equipment to stay ahead in conflicts against the Russian army. The work of the Russian army in Ukraine will be even more difficult in the next period. It is only a matter of time before the Russian soldiers hear about the last aid package that will come from the USA to the Ukrainian army. One more reason will be added to the low morale of the soldier fighting on the Russian fronts, in case of receiving news of aid. The Ukrainian army feels great power behind them. It is believed that the liberties will emerge in the Russian occupation, together with the great powers of which Ukraine is based. Thank you for watching us.